señalaron. Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hasta dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's happening? It's the Rise Up International Morning Show, and I'm live and direct. Wait. Who we have in the building? What's going on? Who is this man? MIA. We got the international Boona straight out of France. What's happening, Boona?
Yeah, glad to be back on the show. It's been a while. You know, I've been very busy the last few weeks. Okay. But we've come with some good news for our audience. New show that, you know, will start very soon, Blackpool Media.
Okay. We ain't gonna tell them about the show just yet. You trying to take it easy, ease on there.
No, like, for all of my fans who are wondering, where is Boona?
Your fans was wondering where you was at. Is that what it was?
I've been watching.
You've been watching. They been crying.
A lot of people were commenting, "Where is Boona? What happened to Boona?" I'm doing well, just to reassure those people.
Man, listen.
Yeah, it's very
busy. So happy that you came to give the fans what they wanted. Anyway,
I don't know if probably people in the audience remember Ramzi Baroud, whom we've had on the show two months ago, I think. He was actually in France. We invited him along with sister and comrade Jemima Pierre, Haitian comrade who's teaching University of Vancouver. So we had that Pan-African conference that was held in Paris, organized by the organization that, Pan-African League Umoja organization that Fernando and I are a member of. So it was a very important event. And actually, I was on a tour with Ramzi. I was not doing the speaking, right? It was his tour. But I was with him for 10 days in November, late November, December. So that's also one of the reasons why people haven't seen me for a while.
Okay, you was on tour. It's cool, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we did several cities in France, southern France, northern France, Belgium, and then Paris.
Okay. That sounds like a pretty good tour, brother.
Yeah.
Boona's on the world tour while the rest of us over here working hard, fighting imperialism.
Well, I don't know if I should say this publicly, but we also invited for a tour, but you haven't accepted our invitation yet.
You invited who for a tour, brother?
Yeah. You told me you'd be coming to the UK for your book, right?
Oh man, see why you bringing up old stuff? Yeah,
that book has to be promoted. Otherwise, no. If you don't talk about it, who else is going to talk about it?
Hey man, we was coming. Then our agent just popped on the screen. You know what I'm saying? The remarkable Natasha. What's happening, Natasha? Natasha probably going to get packages or something. They know. Tell her what she was doing early this morning.
All, people know how it is out here.
Oh, how is it out here?
It's
Right.
it's a lot going on out here.
Okay. Did you? I don't know if you heard about Boona's tour. Boona was just talking about
No, it
how he
wasn't
was
my
going to tour around the world.
I know he was doing a world European tour.
Ooh, a world European tour. He's hitting all the colonies, huh? Boona was doing a plantation tour. Damn, Boona, what's up with that, bro?
Yeah, so
Anyway,
it was. I was very exhausted because it was quite long, and yeah, but people were very enthusiastic, very friendly. So it was also for the Pan African organization that I belong to be more involved in the solidarity with the people of Palestine. So as you know, Ramsey was born in Gaza, born and raised in Gaza. He then, moved to the US to study, and I think he's one of the most fearless spokesperson for the Palestinians in the US and globally. And
okay.
interestingly, he was, there are a lot of people in France who are familiar with his work, which I found very, very surprising. But yeah, it was a great tour, although I was not the main speaker.
Now, was his sister? And my correct me if I'm wrong. Was his sister recently assassinated? Is that him or?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember, his sister was
Yeah.
assassinated a few days after we had him on the show. Don't know if you guys remember.
Right.
It was back
I
in
remember.
October.
Yeah, I
Right?
remember.
Yeah. So it was very
Right.
difficult moment for him personally and his family.
Right.
Um,
And tell the people, for folks who are checking us out and they missed that show, they was watching something else they shouldn't have been watching. Give them a little background on who you're talking about and what happened with his sister, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Ramzi Baroud is a Palestinian American author, journalist, political activist, actually director of the Palestine Chronicle, which people can find online, which is one of, at least in my opinion, one of the best resources in English language on Palestine and the struggle of Palestinian people for self-determination and their liberation from Zionist genocidal colonialism. So he's the author of several books as well, three of which have been translated in French. So the tour was also an opportunity for us and him to make, the latest book that was published in, I think, last month or 2 months ago. So it's very recent. His latest book. So the title in English is Our Vision for Liberation. I think it came out 2 or 3 years ago in English already, but in French it came out this year. So also coincided with the mass genocidal campaign that is still ongoing in Palestine. So he's a very important Palestinian figure, in my opinion. And the first time I read one of his books, actually an article, an essay that was part of a collective book, was the International Brigades Against Apartheid. So there was a section there was a chapter in that book in which he was talking about the interconnections between the South African, the struggle against apartheid in South Africa and the struggle of the Palestinians. So that was 2 or 3, 4 years ago when I read that book, and that's when I started reading his work and also following the Palestine Chronicle, which to me, and I really recommend people who want to know more about the current developments in Palestine, but also the geopolitical and historical context of that fight, to really visit and donate to Palestine Chronicle, which, by the way, is under attack by the U.S. government. There's a legal procedure that is still going on that they have started actually a few months ago. Some hostages who were freed from Gaza, who are actually accusing the Palestine Chronicle of, I won't go into much details, but being in cahoots together with some forces in Palestine. So yeah, it's his under attack. Palestine Chronicle is under attack, and also his eldest daughter, Zarifa, is also under attack. So there are two legal cases against her. So it's not the type of intellectuals who will do conferences and not take any risk. So he's really a freedom fighter, and I think he's perpetuating a legacy that he acquired from his grandfather, his father, and the spirit of resistance in Gaza that we are still seeing as we speak. I think he kind of, he really embodies that. So it was really a privilege to be with him during all that time.
Okay, well, we're glad you went on tour and gave us the whole version of the whole tour. He's like, and furthermore,
That was the short report. I'll come in with the Buddha report later on.
okay, cool. Natasha, you had something to say? I know you was saying something about how you like my hoodie. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Definitely not. It's a basic hoodie. Sorry, Kalanji.
Wow. I see I'm on the wrong show. Anyway.
But no, I didn't have anything to say, but I mean, I think one of the things that we know, when we're talking about like imperialism and thinking about, Buna and, what he was talking about on his show and just connecting and talking about, not his show, on his tour, and connecting it also to thinking about the way in which, when you do resist, there's going to always be the pushback from, the state, from those who are the ones who are imperialists and colonialists. And him mentioning how Ramsey, right? Ramsey? Ramsey's older daughter has these cases upon her, right? And also, so just thinking about the way that these different countries use their quote unquote laws and legal means to try to stop resistance. And it was also making me think about Imam Jamil Al-Amin, and thinking about how, the state we've seen it in the past, and we see it today still, but just that they're still using these same tactics of putting charges on you and, burying you in legal processes. And then, even sometimes if they don't assassinate you that way, they want to assassinate you through putting you behind the walls.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but Ramsey's sister was a doctor in Gaza. She was actually assassinated a few days after we did the interview with him on Black Pearl Media, on the Rise Morning Show. So, yeah, she was in a taxi in Khan Yunis in Gaza, and the taxi that she was in was basically bombed by the genocidal forces. So, yeah, he also lost, dozens of members of his family, extended family, the Baroud family in Gaza. So, yeah, once again, we'd like to, extend our condolence to Ramsey's family, and also full solidarity with not only his family, the people of Gaza, but also our brothers and sisters in Palestine who are currently facing the Zionist genocidal regime. And the fact that he's being harassed, him and his daughter, Zarifa, are being harassed, prosecuted. It's also, I think, indication of how seriously, the Western powers take, Ramsey's struggle, because there are a lot of people who are doing, and here I don't mean to criticize anyone, but I think those who are not, we just think that, going to demonstration and taking pictures is enough. When you're actually taking no risk, I think it's also important for them to question their own involvement in the struggle, because if the state is not against you, whether directly or indirectly, so I think you have to question whether what you're doing is really threatening the system. And if you also, as a so-called revolutionary or anti-imperialist, you also have to question to what extent you are willing to fight the system, right? And the type of risk that you're willing to take. And I think that, I'm very happy to be in the show today with people who've been also exposed to that type of, state repression, and who are actually supporting political prisoners, some of whom we have mentioned several times on this show. And actually people could have seen their pictures in the intro. So I really appreciate that, that you've been involved in the case of Kalanje for several decades.
You said what?
Buddha's like, and Kalanje, he's been involved for, many hundred
years. It's very important. I mean, you don't have people who have that type of, honestly,
longevity, constance,
like
keep it coming.
This for our audience, this is not something that was planned, right? It was not a condition for me to be back on the show.
Hey, listen, I'm afraid of what y'all gonna say next, but check it. No, but definitely, definitely appreciate appreciate both of you and your work, on all continents, especially, just you all being a couple days younger than me. You know what I'm saying? Younger than I am, it's refreshing, to see that, we still moving forward. That's what's important right there. But also want to say, definitely, salute to Ramsey and Buna with his international tours, on his plantation tours. I know that Natasha mentioned Imam Jamil. Imam Jamil Al-Amin is in a health crisis right now, and we have an urgent medical alert. I'm working on getting his attorneys on the show. I just had some correspondence with one of them earlier today. So, we're going to be, look for them very soon. We'll give you more of an update on Imam Jamil shortly. We have a number of things happening. We do have a guest coming up right here on the Rise Up Morning Show, an international guest. So make sure you don't touch that dial. But for now, we're going to go to a quick Black Power break, and we're going to be right back at you. This is the Rise Up International Morning Show. Don't get it twisted. Black Power Media Reloaded. Let's get it.
We do not see the creation of the United States in the 18th century as a great leap forward for humanity. We see the creation of the United States of America as a great leap forward for enslavement of Africans, as a great leap forward in terms of European settlers seizing the land of the indigenous and then liquidating them. I'm afraid to say that many of our so-called friends on the left have either ignored our intervention, which is like biology teachers deciding that they don't like the uncovering of DNA in the early 1950s, and so therefore they're not going to teach that in their biology classes. And so this is scandalous. I often say about the United States, if you want to keep it secret, publish it in a book, because people don't read. But I'm also beginning to think they don't necessarily listen either. So obviously there's something deeper. There's some sort of ideological blind spot that hampers the absorption of reality. These books that I've been writing about slavery also invoke the notion of revolution. That is to say, my book confronting Black Jacobins, the United States Haitian Revolution, the origins of the Dominican Republic, confronts the epical, profound Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, a successful revolt of the enslaved. Many of us in the Black liberation movement in the United States pay careful and close attention to the international situation. And we use that in order to plot strategy. That helps to determine whether or not we should advance or should we retreat. And right now, I would say it's time for advance. The polls, the exit polls suggest that at most, Mr. Trump got 15% of the Black American vote. That is to say, he did not get 85% of the Black American vote. If every constituency had voted like Black Americans, Mr. Trump would be on his way to prison right now, as opposed to on his way back to the White House.
Okay. That was Dr. Gerald Horn. Word on the street is he's joining the Black Power Media Reloaded family. Buna, what's happening with that, man? What's going on, man? I missed like 2 days. I come back. We got a whole new roster. What's happening, Buna? Talk about it.
Yeah, so this is a show that we've been talking, for at least a couple of months. We've also mentioned it when Dr. Johan was on the show. I don't know when was the last time. Was it 2 months ago? So it's going to be a monthly internationalist program, as you've seen. And actually, I'll be one of the hosts, and there's also another co-host who's on the show, Natasha. We also have a sister from Gabon who's based in Monaco, Malika, and our comrade Leonardo from South Africa. So it's going to be a monthly internationalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonial show with a historian, political activist who I think does not, need any introduction to our audience, right? Because I think most of the people who've been following Black Poem know him. So it's going to be once a month, and we'll try to cover at least a book written by Gerald Horne. There are 50 of them by my own count. So it's going to be, so we'll try to cover at least one of the books written by Gerald Horne for each session. The first session will be first episode will be this weekend, I guess. So, yeah.
Okay. We'll you all gonna have to stay tuned to Black Power Media Reloaded to know when it's popping off. I think we have a awesome lineup right now. We have everything from grassroots organizers, freedom fighters, to hip hop artists, and folks from the academy. We have the Dr. Joy Jameses and the Dr. Gerald Horns, and the Professor Griffs, which is Boona's favorite.
Arm the masses.
Arm the masses, you know what I mean? We have Rise Up International Morning Show, and a whole lot more dealing with political prisoners, so on and so forth. And of course, on this platform, that you've seen everyone from the Mumias to the Sekou Odingas, Rise and Power to Sekou Odinga, to the Dr. Cornel Wesses, to the all types of different hip hop artists, freedom fighters, so on and so forth. And I think today, keeping in the vein of folks who are in line with political prisoners and who are anti-imperialists, we have a special guest joining us, and I think Natasha's going to read his bio. I just recently, to be quite honest with you, we did a Mumir's 70th birthday piece back in April 20th, and I know that he was on one of the people on the roster with us. I believe he sent in a video, but he's always been a supporter of Mumia for one, and I don't think a lot of people know that. But I want Natasha to go ahead and read the bio so we can bring our next guest on.
Absolutely. So our guest for today is Vijay Prashad. He's a historian, journalist, author, and activist. Vijay is the author of several books, too numerous to mention, but we will still mention a few for those of you in our audience who are not familiar with his work, and also, need to go and get his work. So some of the books that he's written are The Darker Nations, A People's History of the Third World, Poorer Nations, A Possible History of the Global South, Letters to Palestine, Red Star Over the Third World, Washington Bullets, A History of the CIA Coups and Assassinations, The Withdrawal, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, and the Fragility of U.S. Power, with Noam Chomsky. So that book was written in collaboration with Noam Chomsky, and his latest book is also written with Noam Chomsky, and it's entitled On Cuba: Reflections on 70 Years of Revolution and Struggle. And Vijay is also the executive director of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research and the editor of Leftward Books. Vijay, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show.
It's really great to be with you. Thanks a lot. And it's nice to see my old friend Boona, who, when you mentioned the Tricontinental, it's important to say that he's part of a French bureau of the Tricontinental. I'm very happy and proud to have him here. Natasha, Kalonji, nice to be with you. Kalonji, I have to ask you this before we get going. Your name is a brilliant name. In the language that I speak, Kalonji is a seed, and I don't know what it means for you, but it's an onion seed.
Right. So Kalonji is black seed. So I'm sure that you must be from India, somewhere in those parts. In Central Africa, it means man of victory.
Ah, brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant,
yeah. So
brilliant. And I wonder what the relationship then is between the black seed or the onion seed and man of victory. There must be a lovely old Afro-Asian story.
yeah, well, as you know, black seed oil is good for tension, stress. It's good to for health, vitality, so on and so forth. And black seed for us is also melanin. So the blackness itself, the darkness or whatever. So we're victorious by nature, and we can definitely go on and on. There's some stories about the Dravidians out of India and the Dalits where they use black seed for certain rituals and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with your culture.
No, that's a fantastic name. I really love it, Kalonji.
No, I appreciate that, definitely. See,
That's
I
why
tried to tell them, they didn't know.
all black people get you an African name. See, there's so much, right?
That's what we got. That's what we got. Definitely glad to have you on, Vijay. And I'm glad. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate that you know Buna. You know, our condolences for that.
What a beginning! Perfect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Vijay, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show. Natasha has, in her introduction, given us a snapshot of the fantastic work that you've been doing for decades. So I was wondering, for people who are not familiar with the work of the Tricontinental Institute and also the Leftward books that you have started, that you're one of the editors. So I was wondering if you could speak, a few words about those two very important institutions.
I mean, I'm very happy to talk about it. The main issue that I think has bothered a lot of people for a very long time is that at least since the collapse of the USSR, the weakening of the confidence of the third world as a political project, we've all been firehosed by Western thought. There was like a real drive and push from the US Academy, from European Academy to push postmodern ideas on us, all kinds of different fashions and fads. And it's a curiosity and I'm very much at the heart of this particular debate and dispute on the African continent. It's a curiosity that on the African continent, students in universities and colleges start learning economics by a paradigm that makes absolutely no sense for the continent. So the start of the first chapter is about the so-called utility calculations, demand and supply calculations, the market and so on. But in fact, in an African college, let's say in Lusaka, Zambia, if you are a student at the University of Zambia, the first day in an economics class should be, how can Zambia, a rich country with all these resources, the copper, mainly the copper, let's just take the copper, this rich country, how can it have poverty? How can the people be poor? The principal question on the African continent for many countries is not what is demand, what is supply, but how is it that rich countries can be poor? And so Tricontinental was started as an initiative of social and political movements to effectively change the terms of our intellectual discussion. We don't want the terms to be set at Harvard University or at Oxford University or even at the Sorbonne, Buna. We want the terms to be set for African, Asian, Latin American students so that their realities are at the center of the debate and dispute for themselves. So that really was the origin of Tricontinental, and in a sense, Leftward Books. I also run a publishing house in South Africa called Inkani Books. We are interested in reviving the earlier generation of national liberation writers. We just published the first collection in years of the writings and speeches of Kwame Nkrumah, called The Revolutionary Thought of Kwame Nkrumah. I'm interested in lifting up out of a sectarian tradition, particularly now with the liberation struggles in the Sahel region of Africa, very much interested in lifting up multiple editions of Thomas Sankara's writings and speeches, not just what was published earlier by Pathfinder, but there's a lot more material. Sankara talking about administration, the importance of setting an agenda for a state, and so on. This is the stuff that would be useful today for Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. It would be interesting for our comrades and friends in Niger and so on. So we want to draw a straight line, in a sense, between national liberation thought, which has been suppressed by this fire hose of postmodernism. We want to revive the thinking of our intellectuals, whether it's EMS Namboodiripad in India, or it's Patrice Lumumba in Africa, or indeed Carlos Mariátegui in Peru, in Latin America. We want to come back to this thinking. This is not decolonial. We're not making any great claim to indigenousness. We are making claims to the national liberation struggle that vindicated our fights against colonialism. This is a recent struggle. Those leaders and thinkers have been suppressed. We want to lift them up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Vijay. I just wanted to mention the fact that, for example, the South African publishing house that you have mentioned, I think they published recently the Zulu translation of The Wretched of the Earth, Fanon. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you and the Tricontinental Institute because, for example, we've translated recently as part of the French Bureau a study on Josie Mpama, whom, to be honest, I didn't know. I mean, I knew a lot of anti-apartheid heroes, but she's among the heroines. To be honest, the heroes who I did not know till I read that study, which is very important, which we have started sharing with our French-speaking comrades. And yeah, we look forward to keep working on those, very important studies because, like you said, many of us, including those who identify as the descendants or people who are still being colonized, I think one of the challenges that we're facing is that, and this is something that Dhoruba bin Wahad, whom we've had frequently on this show, a veteran of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army, he said that one of the challenges that we are faced with, the young generation, is that we are not in touch with our radical history. And this is why we are sometimes in a process that is what he calls the reinvention of failure, right? Because we are not we are not really. We might know some of the names like Sankara, Fanon, Nkrumah, Josie Mpama, Ruth First, who is also an author that very important writer, political activist that the Tricontinental Institute has written on. They published a collection of essays by Ruth First. So these are heroes and heroes that we might hear their name, but we don't really know what they have actually done. So I really wanted to congratulate you again for the fantastic work that you've been doing.
I mean, Mona, let me just pick up on the point about Nkrumah, because this for me is a very sore spot. Nkrumah has been truly suppressed. He is one of the greatest Marxist intellectuals from the African continent, and he is not treated as an intellectual. He's treated, I'm sorry to say, by scholarship that largely comes from the North as a dictator. Kwame Nkrumah was an extraordinary man. He basically fought to become a young teacher, struggled to develop his own abilities to teach, to formulate his understanding of the Gold Coast under British colonialism. Nkrumah developed an anti-colonial attitude. He was able to win a scholarship to go to the United States to study in Philadelphia. But, people say it's when he was in the US that he got radicalized. Not true. On the way to the United States, when he's in England, it's 1936, and he hears the news that Italy has invaded Ethiopia. And he describes the revulsion that he feels because Ethiopia was one of the few countries that had not been taken over by European colonialism. And he was very angry. He said, I wanted to rip the newsstand down. I was that angry. Goes to the United States, studies in the US, makes contact with black radicals and others in the United States, returns to Britain, helps W.E.B. Du Bois and others with the 1945 Pan-African Conference in Manchester, then goes back home to the Gold Coast, gets a little car, drives to almost every village and town in the country, giving speeches about the dignity of the people of the Gold Coast, builds a political movement, is arrested, thrown into prison. From prison in 1951, he wins a landslide in an election for Accra, the Accra seat to the assembly. He becomes the leader of a partial government. He brings this government eventually to power in a independence movement in 1959. And then Nkrumah sets his sights on not only building this great country of Ghana, with new projects for electrification, literacy, and so on, but Nkrumah understands that Ghana cannot be alone, and he pushes a Pan-African vision. It is because of Nkrumah that people like Lumumba and others who come to Accra for a conference on Pan-Africanism, he meets Fanon, he meets Lumumba. Lumumba says that Nkrumah is my mentor. He mentors a number of that generation. It's because of Nkrumah that in 1963, the Organization of African Unity is created in Addis Ababa. Now it's called the African Union. And when he is couped during a trip to China, they try to wipe out his heritage. His statues are dropped. A deep, CIA move comes to invalidate the ideas and legacy of Kwame Nkrumah. You travel today to countries in Africa, people just don't know the importance of Kwame Nkrumah to the entire project, modern project of African liberation. People here, Rodney and others are getting, lifted out. But Nkrumah built a state. Nkrumah attempted to build a continent. This guy is extraordinary. And I think and I don't want to sound like a nutcase conspiratorial person, but I feel like it's a pretty deliberate strategy to prevent young people from reading, for instance, Neocolonialism, one of the best books about imperialism after 1945. It's an extraordinary book. People are just not driven to read some of his later books about the betrayals of colonialism and neocolonialism, his frustration with the electoral route, his book on guerrilla warfare. I mean, some of the stuff is out of date. You're not going to go and fight a guerrilla war today. It's going to be difficult. But these are object lessons in how to understand power. And I feel very strongly that, the quote unquote bringing back of the full history and legacy of Kwame Nkrumah is so important for all of us, not only on the continent, but across the former third world. And indeed, Kalonji, what you were talking about earlier, and what Gerald Horne was talking about in his quote, saying we look abroad to get strategy. Also for people in the United States, very important to reflect on what Nkrumah says. He'll teach people about not falling for the trickery of imperialism within the United States. People saying, well, Kamala Harris would have been a great president. I doubt it. Nkrumah would have slapped you for saying that.
I definitely agree with you. I think, there's a lack of critical analysis and understanding about what is the current state that we're in, like particularly because we're disconnected, like you were saying, from our history of those who were not just within what they call the third world, but also here within the United States, of that radical history, like our radical history, just in general around the world, on the continent of Africa, in North America, in Latin America, in the Caribbean. Much of that is not really put forward, like you're saying. And I do agree with you a lot about the Academy pushing so much of these like postmodernist thoughts that also at the same time are trying to like rebrand and rename indigenous ideas, right? Other, third world ideas, as you would call it, and trying to present it as their own thoughts and leading us away from thinking about liberation and Pan-Africanism, like we were talking about. Not only like when you're talking about how the legacy of Nkrumah has been buried, that's been buried along with Pan-Africanism, right? Pan-Africanism has been buried. Being African-centered has been buried. Like the understanding of what it means to operate from your own position and your own understanding and thought. When we think about the legacy of imperialism, neocolonialism as it exists today. So with all that said, and I'm thinking about, you know, the phrase that you talk about in terms of hyper imperialism, right? Thinking about that and how it relates and connects to all that we're talking about in today. And how it's affecting the lives of people living in the global north, as well as people living in the global south. So I wanted to also recommend an excellent title, Hyper Imperialism, a Dangerous Decadent New Stage, that people can also find on the website of the Tricontinental Institute. But I wanted to ask you, what is, if you can tell the people, what is hyper imperialism, and how does it differ from imperialism as we generally know it, right? As we've come to know it in today's time. I know it's kind of like a broad question, but if you can provide people with like one or two examples of it to be able to illustrate what hyper imperialism is and how it actually works.
Well, you know, let's just take an example. Give me an opportunity to talk about a story that I just like to talk about, which is what was done to Libya. You know, in Libya, contagiously, because this was a contagion after the protests in Tunisia in 2010, in Egypt, and so on. You know, section of the law faculty and others in Benghazi started a protest. And they said, you know, we want more freedom and rights and liberties, just like, you know, law faculties would do in other countries. A dispute begins with the government in Tripoli, led in a peculiar way by Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi. And then a section of the military in Benghazi defects to the rebellion. Mr. Gaddafi and his son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, send their troops along, and at the cities of Ajtabia, at the northern end of the Mediterranean, these two forces collide. There's in fact air fire happening and so on. The Saudi media, a newspaper called Al Arabiya, starts to say that genocide is being conducted in Libya. And the Western press picks this up, and people hate Gaddafi because Gaddafi used to say to the Saudi king at the Arab League meetings, "You were made by the British." He would say to the Qataris, "You are a dog of the Americans." You know, that's how Gaddafi talked. People hated him. Everybody ganged up against this guy. They said there's a genocide. The Americans and French went to the UN Security Council. They first passed a resolution saying nobody should arm either side. Okay, nobody should arm either side. But then this was not good enough for the West. They went back with a resolution saying under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which allows armed force, that all member states should go in to create a no-fly zone. Remember the phrase, no-fly zone. There should be no aerial firing, because remember, both sides had sections of the Air Force. France and the United States used that resolution. 1973 is the number of the resolution from 2011. They used that resolution to just go in and destroy Libya. The African Union had assembled a group of heads of states, including Jacob Zuma of South Africa, you know, a large country, important country. They were all ready to fly to Tripoli and fly to Benghazi to bring the temperature down. They were following a mandate of the African Union, which had given them a mandate to bring peace in Libya, which, let's not forget, is on the African continent. And therefore, the African Union has a mandate. But no, the French warned the African Union, if that plane takes off, it could get shot down. So it can't take off. They knew that the African Union was ready to go and negotiate. They said no. And they just went in and barbarically, brutally, dangerously destroyed the country. They violated the mandate of the UN, which just said no-fly zone. People can go and read UN Resolution 1973. I wrote a book about this called Arab Spring, Libyan Winter. This is a great example of hyper-imperialism. Here is the West, dangerous. You know, anything happens, they reach for the gun. I mean, this is the Wild West. 73% of global military spending is spent by the United States and its allies. You know, in Niger, where Abdul Rahman Tichani is now the head of government, there was a coup d'etat. One of the reasons there was a coup d'etat is in the city of Agadez, which is not the capital, but a very large city in central Niger. There is a giant US drone base. Most people in the United States do not know that they spent hundreds of millions of US taxpayer money to build a giant drone base in Niger. For what? Effectively to spy on poor, middle class, in some cases, African men, because I've actually traveled with them that route from Agadez to Sabah, Libya. Poor middle class African men get on Toyota trucks. I've never seen a woman do this crossing. They're all young men, put on dark glasses to shield themselves from the Sahara, and these US drones track them in order to stop these trucks getting to Libya and therefore trying to enter Europe. This is a hostile act by the United States and the French military, which operated until recently in Niger. This is hyper-imperialism. Why is it okay for the French to have military bases in the Sahel? Why is it okay for the United States to actually take over Terminal 1 in Accra International Airport so that US troops, they fly their planes, land on Ghanaian soil, Ghana, liberated by the movement led by Kwame Nkrumah? US planes can land in Ghana, and the soldiers walk into Terminal 1. They don't show their passport to anybody. They don't show any ID cards. They can walk into Ghana. Nobody else can do that. If you're a diplomat, you have to show a passport. US troops just walk in. This is hyper-imperialism. Israel has just seized a part of Syria that is larger than the size of Gaza. They've just gone in and taken it over. Nobody cares. In our institute, we call this the International Division of Labor. The International Division of Humanity. When, for instance, Palestinians are being killed, or when children in Sudan are being killed in a terrible outside provoked war, when children are being killed in the Great Lakes War in Africa, that's okay. They are not children. When one Ukrainian child dies, everybody's hue and cry. A white child has been killed. We call this the International Division of Humanity. And indeed, hyper-imperialism operates like that. I mean, if the Chinese, for instance, had the temerity to, even bring one of their warships somewhere 200 nautical miles from the US coastline, the US would go nuts. But the United States warships, armed and ready with nuclear weapons, constantly harass the Chinese at the territorial, or not territorial, at the naval limit, at the water line, constantly harass them. And this is perfectly okay. Hyper-imperialism is this attitude. Reach for the gun whenever you feel like you want to. Doesn't even have to be a conflict. I mean, in Libya, it was hardly the worst conflict on the African continent or anywhere in the world at that time. And yet they destroyed the country, still not recovered. That was in 2011. We are almost into 2025. The country has been destroyed, its institutions destroyed. At the time I wrote, it takes 100 years to build a state. You can destroy it in an afternoon. It's not going to get rebuilt that quickly. It doesn't happen like that. We've seen what has been done to the state formation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They have destroyed elements of the state which Lumumba could have constructed in such a powerful way for the people. It's going to take a long time to recover sovereignty for that country. This is hyper-imperialism. Reach for the gun, International Division of Humanity, decadent, because these leaders, the Macrons, the Trumps, they don't have any ideas. They just have force, power, vulgarity. They are vulgar people. They don't want to solve the problems of humanity. They've forgotten that the word human belongs in the name humanity.
That was powerful, Vijay. You laid it out in a way that it can't be disputed, and it's I'm just sitting here and listening, and as much as we have these discussions, it never gets old, and it never gets old because of the fact that this is the ingredients to maintain empire, right? In the aforementioned piece on hyperimperialism, that people can find on the website. The website of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. The authors write that it is not a matter of exaggeration to say that the global North has declared a state of open hostility and war on any section of the global South that does not comply with the policies of the global North. The piece also includes a quote from a joint declaration of EU, NATO corporation, published on January 9th, 2023, which said, "We will further mobilize the combined set of instruments at our disposal, be they political, economic, or military, to pursue our common objectives to the benefit of our 1 billion citizens." Taking a concrete example, can you elaborate on how that state of open hostility has been deployed in the context of the current genocides?
I mean, let's first take a not genocidal example, and then we see how ugly this is. A few years ago, through a long process of debate and discussion, the governments of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo agreed to jointly process their lithium and other metals and minerals that they have. And they were going to get some assistance from China, but it was not a Chinese joint venture. This was a Zambia DRC project. Eventually, these two countries wanted to build a car. That was the idea. You know, the inspiration came from Bolivia, which during Evo Morales' time processed lithium and built not only a lithium battery, but also a little car, a very small little car that's good for the Bolivian terrain. The DRC and Zambia, even though ruled by governments of the right, let's say, understood that they wanted to control their development. Okay, when they started to go down this path, the United States called upon African leaders to come to a US-Africa summit to be held in Washington, D.C. They didn't even hold it on the continent. They held it in D.C. They summoned the heads of government. So the heads of government, of course, you know, when the emperor calls, you have to go and you have to bend your knee to Emperor Biden. Not sure which direction he's looking at, but you have to still go and bend your knee to the emperor. Anyway, people went. And at the side of that meeting and discussion, an announcement was made by Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, who, you know, Buna, maybe the only decent thing about him is that he sort of speaks French. But otherwise, he's a moronic character whose lead guitar is also pretty appalling. He plays a bit slow for my taste. If you're going to pick up the electric guitar, you better play on time, my friend. If you're going to play that slowly, it really sounds bad. Anyway, you know, Mr. Blinken had a press conference where he talked about how the United States, the DRC, Zambia, and Angola were going to jointly develop a project called the Lopito Corridor, where the resources of Zambia and the DRC were going to be partly processed and then shipped through Angola out to the United States, where, you know, the proper manufacturing would either take place or in Mexico. In other words, the United States just walked in to a sovereign project and hijacked it. This is the level of lack of both concern for the actual developments taking place on the continent, and it's actually an indicator of the poor journalism in the West, because this was barely reported in this way in the Western media. They were just reporting, saying, you know, what a great thing the United States is doing. It's going to help these Africans develop. But maybe the Africans don't need your help. Maybe they already have it together and you strong-armed them and said that if you don't come into this. And around this time, Angola basically walked out of the group of friends in defense of the UN Charter. The United States effectively told the Angolan government, if you don't come with us, we're going to squeeze you very hard. I find this is a very painful example, because this example condemns hundreds of millions of children on the African continent to starvation. That's actually what this press conference was about. Because if these countries had been able to industrialize the value chain, produced a small car, their parents of these children would have had decent jobs. They would have been able to earn enough living. The states would have perhaps collected revenue and built decent schools so that the children in the copper belt region of Zambia, under whose feet is the copper, would not be illiterate. The illiteracy rate is 60% in the Copperbelt region of Zambia. I mean, this deal by Blinken condemns, and I'm not exaggerating the numbers, hundreds of millions, because it's over generations. This is over generations. This is also a form of soft genocide. This is the soft genocide of imperialist policy on continents of Africa, Asia, Latin America. I mean, there is the hard genocide that is taking place in Palestine. Of course, that's a hot genocide. But then there's a cold genocide. These continents are struggling with a cold genocide. It is intolerable to me that generation after generation, we cannot transcend the extremely transcendable problem of hunger, inequality, poverty, illiteracy. These are transcendable problems. It is absolutely outrageous. And that's why I consider this a cold genocide. It's cold because you don't see it. There's no bomb falling in Zambia right now. That's a hot genocide. But it's a genocide no less. It's a cold genocide.
No doubt. Definitely appreciate that.
Can I add a little something before you ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Kalaji, I was just to add to what you're saying. I think, just thinking about, and I think this is part of the reason why, going back to what we were talking about before, is making sure that there's a disconnect between the resistance that we know today and the actual resistance that existed. But the idea, when Kalanji read the quote from the website, also too, that they're after their own common objectives, right? That benefits their people. They're here to benefit white people over everybody else. Sure. That if they have to destroy the world for the benefit of white people, they will do that. If they have to destroy every other group, every living thing on the earth, that they will do that for their own benefit. And then they've come to make us think that their benefits are our benefits, and it's not. And I think that's what people are still caught up in today, thinking that we have some kind of skin in the game of white supremacy when they make these moves as quote unquote Americans, or, quote unquote French, when they try to, tell those who are those post-colonial African countries that, used to be controlled directly by the French, that they are French, not African, but that their first, the way that they should identify as being a Frenchman, or that, those who are still part of the British Commonwealth are British, even though they're destroying and killing you for their benefit, but they want you to think that you identify with them and that their benefit is yours.
When it's convenient, you know what I'm saying? And that's on a micro and a macro. When it's convenient. If not, when you get back here, then you're African American. You understand what I'm saying? So that's when they throw on the hyphens, etc. You know what I mean? But when it's convenient, then you're an American. Come fight for white hegemony. Let's fight for white power. You know what I'm saying? And let's go to extreme lengths. I'm glad you raised that. Let's talk about resistance and alternatives to hyperimperialism. Unlike the U.S.-led hyperimperialist bloc, the global South is far more homogenous, and it's marred with contradictions and divisions, which have led to the assassinations of the third world, which is an expression that you have used in your book, The Darker Nations. Yet in many of your lectures, conferences, interviews, and even in the aforementioned piece on hyperimperialism, you talk about a new mood in the global South that is challenging, a new mood in the global South that is challenging, questioning the domination of the Western neocolonial system. How can this new mood contribute to curtailing the devastating consequences for people living in the global South of the policies implemented by the NATO US-led imperialist bloc?
I mean, nothing happens in a straight line. I wish history advanced in a straight line. We always say history goes in zigs and zags. In fact, it's a spiral sometimes. You get dizzy. Here we go again. Interesting group of fellows have taken Damascus. Here we go again. Haven't we seen this story? That kind of thing. Yeah. The United States. I can't follow. It's so painful. Here we go again. Another school. Another kid goes in with a gun, shoots people. It's not true what people say. Guns don't kill, people do. The guns kill. I mean, if the kid went in there with a knife, for instance, it would be much harder to kill people. You can get pinned down. Guns kill, they are dangerous. Civilians should not be roaming around with guns in public like that. I know it's an unpopular statement in some countries, but for God's sake, I mean, be careful, people. History spins out of control, and I keep thinking, this can't have happened again. I just saw that news, Michigan. Yeah, I think it's Michigan. I thought, oh wait, didn't I see that last week or the week before? Oh, there's another black man killed in the United States by the police. Didn't I see that before? History spins out of control. It's dizzying, it's frustrating, annoying, heartbreaking. Yeah, but there are always cracks and breaks, and it's very important for us, for you guys, for us, collectively, to track the breaks, the cracks, the disassociation, and so on. I found very interesting that when Russia entered Ukraine, many countries around the world, in Latin America, Asia, but particularly Namibia, was a very key example. Namibia refused to condemn the Russians. The Namibian Prime Minister, exactly my age, we are the same generation. She was at the Munich Security Conference. She was attacked by a German man who said to her, you should condemn Russia, double standards and so on, he's saying to her. And she said, listen, why should I condemn Russia? It's your war. It's a European war. Plus, we have many conflicts in Africa. You are not asked to take a position. And thirdly, the Soviet Union is the country that defended us when we were the Southwest African People's Organization fighting against apartheid. You guys didn't defend us. You backed the apartheid forces. Well, she went back home. The president then sent out a tweet to Germany saying, how dare Germany lecture us on genocide? This was after Israel started its bombing. How dare Germany? You came to Southwest Africa before it was Namibia, and you conducted the genocide in 1906 of the Herero and Nama people. You almost wiped out these two populations in Southwest Africa. Germany did this, 40 years before the Holocaust. And he says, don't lecture us. This is the new mood. What gives Namibia the strength to talk like that? To some extent, it's that they don't rely 100% on the International Monetary Fund anymore. They are not reliant on the US Treasury Department. They need cash. They go to China. They go to India. They go to Indonesia. They go elsewhere. They are not reliant on the United States and its institutions. They go to the BRICS Bank. There's a lot of institutions available to Namibia. So that frees them up a lot. And I want to say, last month in November of 2024, there was a important gathering in Niamey in Niger of solidarity with the new governments in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, who have formed the Alliance of Sahel States. These are three countries which have had 5 military coups. The principal framework of these governments is France dégage, or dégage, France get out. But in fact, underneath that are mass political protests in Niger led by women who gathered around the bases yelling, France, go away. It is these mass protests that push the military to overthrow the terrible governments before them and to start an anti-imperialist political project on the African soil. In my opinion, guys, this is the most important indicator of the new mood, and it requires our solidarity. More and more people need to know about what's happening in the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States. Why? Because the West is trying to say, well, they're military dictatorships, they are coups, these are not actually governments, and so on and so forth. I have a lot I can say about Mali in particular, because I'd interviewed Alpha Omar Konare, who had been the president in the 1990s, and I remember what happened to him, but I don't want to go into too much detail. All I want to really say and emphasize is that it is ridiculous to say that, oh, these are military coups, therefore people on the left shouldn't support them. In that case, my friends, we should not support our hero, Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara came to power in 1983 in a military coup. I was a young man at the time. I had a picture of him up in my college because Thomas Sankara was my hero. I followed him on a regular basis, and I was heartsick when he was couped and killed in 1987, only 4 years later. We have to galvanize an international movement to support the alliance of Sahel states. They must not be overthrown. Ibrahim Traore must not be assassinated. Their lives are at stake. These people are patriots. The government in Senegal, led by former tax collectors, also a progressive government, not a radical government, needs our support. This is the new mood. Now, even the government of Chad has told the French, get your troops out. We have to support the government of Chad, even though it's nothing near a progressive government. There is a lot happening on the African continent, in my opinion, that deserves immediate support. The AES project is the most radical project taking place now in the global south. It is absolutely essential that it's up there on our list with Cuba solidarity and so on. This is not to be reduced to military coups. These are popular movements, ordinary people who have struggled and suffered with great poverty. Again, even though they are rich countries. I mean, Niger has some of the world's best uranium, which the French have been stealing to power their uranium reactors, paying nothing. The town of Arlit in northern Niger is garrisoned by the French Foreign Legion and various other French military detachments. I tried to go to Arlit, drive there. It's very difficult to enter the town. I have a photograph of the entry point. Why? Because they treat it as their property. They don't want anybody in there. They just take the uranium, give, pennies on the dollar, as they say, for the uranium. This is outrageous. These countries must be allowed their sovereignty. And that's the final thing I want to say. The new mood in the South is around the concept sovereignty. It's not more radical than that. But I'll say to you that if a country is able to establish its sovereignty, and if it is interested in the well-being of its people, the road to sovereignty and well-being, call it whatever you will, it's going to look like socialism.
Thank you, Vijay. Actually, building on what you say about the, galvanizing international solidarity with the Sahelian states, Cuba, could have added Venezuela as well. I'm sure you agree with that. Sometimes I really get frustrated but I don't want to make it too personal, with the contribution that is expected from activists, revolutionaries, anti-imperialists, especially people based in the West, in those countries that are, implementing the hyper-imperialistic policies that you've been talking about in this interview. I get frustrated because I think that many of us, I'll include myself, do not realize the responsibility that we have and also the limitations, right? So you talk about people who are criticizing the Sahelian Alliance of Sahelian States government, for being, military government, etc. But we are also facing our own challenges with our own states, which we are not able to overcome, right? So if you take the example of Palestine, for example, France, Germany, the UK, the United States, of course, these are governments that have been financing and providing weapons to the genocidal state of Israel. But our movements have not been very successful in preventing that. I mean, I don't want to just put the blame on everyone, but I think this is the type of challenge that we should overcome before going and teaching some lessons to people in the global south. So I know that when you were in Paris, we've discussed this. So you told me that we should avoid factionalism as much as possible. So I was wondering if you have any advice to people in anti-imperialist or so-called revolutionary organizations based in the West on how they can contribute to supporting this new mood that you've talked about, and more generally, the anti-imperialist fights in the global south.
Sometimes when I'm bored, I just go to social media and just check, what are some of the debates. And I find that often I'm attacked by terms I just find so juvenile: campist, genocide denier, blah, blah, blah. This comes from people who, in my opinion, don't want to win. See, I'm in politics and in transformation of society movements to win. I'm not here to be a permanent opposition. We want to take power where we are. We want to change society, And once you take power, You're filled with compromises, problems, the zigzags and dialectics of building a new world. You'll make a lot of errors. You don't have enough people, who have a correct consciousness, in a sense, who have understood exactly what direction you're going to go in. I mean, it's chaos. Yeah. If you actually leave the metropolitan areas of the north and travel to where people are really trying to build a revolution, you will discover lots of people struggling. It's easy to condemn them, but you're condemning them from a position of futility. Like you're saying, we are never going to contest state power in France. We are okay being a purist opposition. We want to attack everybody. But I don't want that, because, like, let's take the country of Niger again. Yeah. Abdul Rahman, the leader now in Niger, he can't afford to say, let's just be an opposition. There are people who are dying of hunger. You've got power, you've got to solve these compelling problems, and to do that, you're going to have to compromise. Maybe you sell some resources to somebody, to get food and things to take care of immediate problems. Then you say, oh my God, look at them. They are selling their resources. Obviously, they are selling their resources. They have to deal with immediate problems faced by people, starvation and so on. But they want to build a project eventually. So people who don't want to win, in my opinion, and this is the argument I say is not sectarian. When somebody says to me, why do you support the Chinese government? Well, look, I'm not supporting the Chinese government. I support the Chinese revolution. It has, after all, eradicated absolute poverty. What other country has done that? I was in Shanghai recently, walked through the streets of Shanghai, no homeless people, okay? During the September UN week, I was in New York City. It was horrifying, okay? I was in Midtown Manhattan. It is horrifying. It's mostly people of color on the street. I was walking down 30 some street. There was a man walking towards me, middle of the day, people walking right by him without wearing any pants. That is not a civilization. That is not a society. That is brutality. To allow a human being to live a life where dignity is compromised, that's not a civilization, friends. I don't know what that is. It's decadent, whatever. Paris, so many homeless people in Paris. It's a hideous city to walk through. I mean, what city of lovers? Which couple wants to walk around surrounded by people in great despair? You want that, you go. In fact, today to a Chinese city where there is no homelessness because absolute poverty has been eradicated. But when I say that, people will say, well, you're bought and paid by the Chinese government. No, I'm not. I'm not bought and paid by anybody. That's what I've seen. Go and see it for yourself if you want to. They had the courage to win in 1949, and then they've struggled to come where they are. They have actually achieved something, and that's important. You gotta, Lenin said something interesting. Lenin said, if you're too afraid to fail, you'll do nothing. If you're too afraid to fail, you'll do nothing. Of course, people who try to win, to change history, are going to fail. Of course, there'll be millions of mistakes. But if you just point the mistakes, then you demoralize yourself and you say, okay, then let's not try. And a lot of politics in the global north is a politics of, in my opinion, from the standpoint of we don't want to win. We just want to be a permanent critic forever. And therefore, they sit back in Paris or in London and they look at what's happening in the Sahel and say, well, these guys are authoritarian. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to fail and so on. And maybe they will fail, but at least they tried. That's better than you. They tried to make history. All you're doing is writing tweets.
Well, listen, man, we might be related. I understand that wholeheartedly.
And I think too, the other thing that I think also going even back to thinking about the way that what lens we're even looking at, our world from, and what solutions we're determining, that there's always this criticism of like, oh, well, if you decide that you want to do this, but all of these critiques to make you say, oh, well, okay, fine, it's not perfect right now, so I can't do it, right? The constant critique and trying to make you fit within the ideas that they think you should be creating a nation and building a nation from is critiqued. So then they say, okay, well, no, that's not really good, try again. So you constantly stay like you're saying, not winning, stay in this position of not doing anything because there's contradictions or because, you know, there's a possibility of failure.
I mean, you know, what is failure other than the fact that you made an attempt to do something good? You know, I salute those who fail. They are to me more impressive than those who did nothing. And we can make a list of people, you know, who failed. Let me ask you, let's go down the list. Did W.E.B. Du Bois fail? He didn't make a revolution in the United States. He didn't even make a revolution in Ghana when he went there. But W.E.B. Du Bois tried everything, and he left behind a body of work that is noble, that is important, that is to be revered. I look at a figure like EMS Namboodiripad from India. Again, he was the first communist chief minister to win an election in a bourgeois democracy in Kerala in 1957. He was then effectively couped in 1959, but he came back to win again. Did he fail? He didn't achieve all his objectives, but today Kerala is one of the most interesting parts of the world. There are more cooperatives in Kerala than anywhere else that you'll see. You know, there is a lively public engagement and debate. During the pandemic, the chief minister of Kerala, a communist, Pinarayi Vijayan, was, you know, he heard the phrase social distancing. Remember that? Physical distancing. Remember that phrase? He said, I reject this phrase. He said, yes, we can allow for distancing, but we have to have social cohesion. People need to go door to door to make sure elders are okay. We have to make sure that people who are ill and infirm get their medicines. So hundreds of youth, communist youth in Trivandrum, the capital, went door to door with clipboards, banging on the door saying, do you need medicines? Oh, you need on Friday? Okay, we'll get it and deliver it to you and blah, blah, blah. They did this during the entirety of the lockdown. At the end of the lockdown, there was a municipal election. And a young woman, 21-year-old woman, Arya Rajendran, who was one of these young women who went door to door, was elected the mayor of the capital city of Kerala, 21 years old. Why? She proved herself on the ground, building society. Because what's important is not building individualism. It's building society. You know, when I tell this story to people in the United States in particular, and I ask them, did the state or anybody knock on your door and ask you how you're doing during the pandemic? People looking at me, are you crazy? You know, nobody knocked on my door. But imagine if you are an elderly person or a person, you know, who doesn't have the means to order delivery, which is expensive. And you say, look, I need to pick up my medicines. I can't get there. And somebody says, don't worry, we'll organize it. Just give us the payment for the mail. Or you order the medicine, we pick it, deliver it for free. Why? Because we're bloody human beings, man. And that's the objective of life, to behave like a human being, not to behave like an individual.
Hey, Vijay, we appreciate you coming on, joining us. We know that you are one of the busiest people on the planet. You know, we got a 2-for-1 because Boona been skipping out. You know, all of a sudden you coming on and whatnot. He appears. I don't know what happened with that, but
internal disputes of the BPM.
Oh man,
I'm not taking any sides in this dispute.
Kalanji, I think Kalanji in my language it means the man who likes washing his dirty line in public, right? That's what it means. That's what it means in my language. Right?
That's funny.
We got haters everywhere, BJ. We have haters everywhere. It's okay though. But definitely we appreciate you you coming on and joining us on this glorious morning. Keep up the solid work. We appreciate your work. In closing, I know that I mentioned in the intro about your efforts towards the liberation of Mumia Abu-Jamal. We know that right now Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown, he's going through some medical crisis. If you don't mind, in closing, tell the people why it's important to support political prisoners here in the U.S. and abroad, if that's okay.
You know, I mean, this is an absolute important thing to talk about. Mumia Abu-Jamal has been a friend of mine for a very long time. I often say, Kalonji, that Mumia Abu-Jamal is the freest man in America. he has the freest brain. There are people who are not incarcerated whose brains are in prison, and there's Abu Jamal, who's in prison but his brain is free. He is that, in that sense, the freest man in the country. And it is an outrage that every year when a presidential term ends, the US president effectively pardons actual criminals and doesn't pardon any political prisoners. Of course, Mumia Abu Jamal, top of my list, Leonard Peltier. I mean, the list is so long that even on an hour show, we couldn't start to scratch the surface of it. It is a disgrace. The United States is running a television program after television program about the prisons in Syria and people being released from them. What about the Gulag archipelago in the United States, in which there are people being held prisoner, in a sense, for life? What about them? When will their reckoning come? I hope sooner than later, if we have the guts to take power.
Hey, on behalf of their committees and all freedom fighters and political prisoners, we thank you. I had the opportunity to sit down with both Mumia and Leonard Peltier this year, and both of these brothers, of course, Mumia just turning 70, Leonard just turning 80. It is a criminal act for not only the state, but for those of us who, as you said, would like to win. For those who are serious about liberation, all eyes should be on the liberation of political prisoners, home and abroad, because without that, we're nothing. These are the fighters. These are those folks that you talked about who made efforts rather than sitting and shooting tweets off. But definitely, we appreciate you coming on board, Vijay, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Vijay. Yeah, great to have you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Bye.
No doubt. Peace. You're checking out the Rise Up International Morning Show. We got Boona doing some work today. Natasha's in the building. Hershey's playing hooky as well. And
guess who's in the Guess who's in the building, Boona? The guy who we haven't really seen.
Who, Boona?
We have Kalanji. Kalanji Changa. Got to say the whole name.
I was on yesterday. What are y'all talking about? I didn't see y'all. Shout out to my co-host Fernando, who joined me while they was playing hooky. But anyway, definitely we appreciate the work and whatnot. Boona, you got any time or you got to bounce out? I know you're on a world tour right now, so we don't want to interrupt.
No, the tour is over.
Your tour's over?
My daughter has been knocking on the door.
Okay, all right. You're blaming on his daughter. We just saw your daughter over here. I don't know what you're talking about. She's even in France. But anyway, we appreciate you coming on board. Tell us about in closing, this show with Horn. They should see it this week coming, next week. What's up?
Yeah, so it's going to be either on Saturday or Sunday.
Okay.
Probably on Saturday. So the first episode will be probably Saturday afternoon. The afternoon in the US, will be evening.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, we hope that we can make it as sustainable as possible, because as you know, Gerald Horn has received a lot of requests for interviews, and he always accepts them. It's fascinating. He's all over the place. Anyone who has a YouTube channel who's interested in interviewing him, I don't even know how he finds the time, because he's doing research, teaching, and also he's an activist, so he's in the struggle. So, and
he's a host himself, interviewing folks on his radio show.
Yeah, he also has his radio show, and you were on his radio show recently, right?
I wasn't gonna say nothing because I ain't wanna.
That's where Kalanji been. He left us.
Wow. Anyway, keep on talking, Buddha. We have too many haters, brother.
Yeah. So, okay. So the name of the show, probably people have probably seen in the video that was screened earlier, is Amandla, right? Which is the cry of freedom in South Africa. Right. So if you look at if you watch the rallies of the economic freedom fighters, for example, but they're not the only ones, of Julius Malema and most political parties in South Africa. So at the end of each meeting, you will say Amandla, right? All power. And people will respond Awetu. Okay. And the reason why we chose that title is because Dr. Gerald Horn, in the 1980s, late 1970s and 1980s, he was actually thoroughly involved in the solidarity movement with our brothers and sisters in not only South Africa, but also in that whole region, right? Southern Africa, Angola, Namibia. Actually, his book on Southern Africa, which is titled "White Supremacy Confronted," was there was the forward of a leader of Namibia, independent Namibia, Toivo van Toivo, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's his name. So he was basically, appreciating the work that Zerlahon has been doing as a president of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, because as you know, he's been trained as a lawyer, right? Attorney. He became a historian later on, which is, another fascinating part of his own biography. So that's why we chose that name, Amandla. So as an appreciation of the work that he's been doing in the anti-apartheid struggle that is going on not only in Africa, because as Vijay has said, there's still, apartheid regimes that are imposed by the West, whether internal or external. And
the whole world is an apartheid regime.
Yeah.
Humanity, as he mentioned.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why we chose that title, just for people to know. And so Natasha will be one of our co-hosts. So it's definitely going to be the best show in town.
Exactly. It's definitely going to be amazing.
I might have to boycott that show. I'm not sure.
You see the haters here. You see the haters. They came back, Buna. They was gone.
I'm saying, man, listen.
Came back.
Y'all don't need my thumbs up. You don't need my extra view.
No, the name of the show is Amanle, not Kalanji, because Kalanji means hater in Zulu.
Exactly.
See, listen. At least VJ knew what time it was, man. The rest of y'all, I like how he tried to trap me up, thought I ain't know the meaning of my name. He says, "Oh, what does it mean?" Like, chill, VJ, that's me. But anyway, no doubt.
Yeah, we'll probably confirm the date later today.
Yeah, okay. So look out for the.
We also share the the flyer of the show, all the information that our viewers need for the first episode of the best show in town.
Exactly. Look out for
y'all working, man. Man, listen, I'm inspired to actually see you all working, man. Because when I first found y'all and recruited you. Y'all was on the corner.
Kalanji, who's that? No.
Wow. We're gonna go to a Black Power break. Thank y'all for watching Rise Up Morning Show. I think Natasha, you gonna stick around? I think we need to give them a story.
Yeah, we'll give you one more story before we leave.
Give them one more story. I'm saying Natasha been skipping, so we're gonna at least give y'all at least a story. Boona talking about his daughter there. We already know she ain't even in the country. We're not gonna say that. It's all good though. But
now you're doubting that I have a daughter, right?
I don't know. We ain't see no pictures. I don't know.
Buddha's like Michael Jackson. You no pictures, don't show.
Yeah. No. So you trying to say he got a son and daughter named Blanket and Ribbon and he the new Michael Jackson? It's cool, Buddha. Buddha, all I know is that she better not be lighter than there's some other folks. Anyway, we out of here. We're gonna be right back with you. Be safe. Right. Stay tuned. Rise Up Morning Show. We're gonna take this quick Black Power break. Maybe give y'all some welfare poets or something.
Poets, y'all, massive for this 4th century, y'all, seen, sight, the sound unheard of massive. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, you hear those war drums? Yeah, just let it breathe. Yeah, you hear those war drums? Yeah, just let it breathe. Yeah, you hear those war drums? Yeah, just let it breathe. Yeah, you hear those war drums? Let it breathe. Let it breathe. Let it breathe. I clutch the microphone, so never fear. Cause Sunny brings atmosphere, breath of life into this battlefield. We call it Barrio Harlem. Gentrifiers is trying to steal like Sunset, South Bronx, and San Juan Hill. Until my homies island side, they hold the San Juan still. The murder of Philly Bento made it oh so real. For young Mike Tenderfoot in the books, chill with crooks till I changed my look and focus on what they took from my collective people. Fucking dogs, birthed in evil, me the need to learn logistics of acquiring the Desert Eagle. To fight you back and Garvey inspired my raps, and Ray told me my shit was dope, so I assumed what I had was crack. And yeah, I hustle hard, we got the flow, so run with us. Just never stepped on our hand, homies eat so they can bundle up when it's cold out. But why pedal dust for a couple bucks to the same knuckle fucks? Getting high since before the Knicks sucked. Totally remember ghetto living older me, not to mention the way my mama sat me down and scolded me when I was out of line. She said that I was born to shine, the last Harlem sun. If your light is dim, then follow mine. I'm from where we all know the post is logo. Used to be where they won't go. Now we got the blocks they run for. Luxury condos, the trumpet sound that bring the bass like a tuba. Tommy Bunga, local daughters that got Elias Yoruba. And I run trick plays so we can fool your Regos, Haiti, I go Cuba, Lexington Ave, shuffle to fly right through ya. Harlem maneuvers forever. PR side will slump you up and leave you near the MGR drive. Cause we are live, and before the blood of my veins run dry, you'll believe that a man can fly with wings that are made of fire. Set the wolves on you, the Jamaicans from Nevins, the Trinnies from Sunnyside, all the wops from Pleasant, the whole zoo of gorillas waiting on Lennox. Will the beast will serve you like a snack box on 111th WB. From Kinshasa to Tripoli, I hope that you reading me. I hope I reach you with my God-given ability over illusions and similes and uncanny agility when I'm wielding a guillotine. I'm trying to bring a balance and establish a symmetry before I lay in the cemetery or left behind bars in a stay-old penitentiary. Essentially for trying to free my country from capitalistic dependency. Screaming mira caballero que lío. Free Oscar and Avelino, hands on Vieques, move the people like Abisu. And we will reach freedom eventually, as long as you walk on a righteous path. Do the knowledge, don't be afraid cause it's only math. Go to college, and don't be ashamed if it doesn't last. It's only class, homie, fail or pass. Keep your books read, and straight from the life the Chris led. The BB tanks, conglomerate in the crep fed. Shine light on brown and black owned businesses. Support your roots and you will grow like photosynthesis. They try to cut us down before you can get to this, so bear witnesses. I snatch your phonies, wood carved necklaces, and say peace to the gods and the earth, the kings and the queens, the hustlers and fiends, and all my niggas stuck in between. They hanging on to broken dreams and failed promises. Hard times breed certified hood pharmacists, or broken men with no grasp for the politics that keep them the victim. But yo, really it ain't hard to miss, although it's easy to bitch, so niggas tend to do it. While change is a task and I'm tending to it. It's like a garden, I'm a farmer, man, I'm trying to bloom it. I'm trying to grow it. With this microphone, peep how I hold it. Others rapping song, check how I wrote it. I rep the welfare and I am a poet, you can quote it.
Sad to good people watching the Rise Up Morning Show.
Welcome, welcome.
Okay, Natasha, you still woke?
Yeah, I'm still awake. You know, I'll be awake all day. You, Kalanji?
Okay, I'm live on the rival. You know, I've been up for hours. That's how we do it, man. Anyway, question. Yeah. So, what you think about the guest and what we
I thought we had a good conversation, and I thought Vijay was dropping a lot of information and clearing a lot of things up and connecting a lot of things, especially when we're thinking about geopolitics as well as internationalism. When we're talking, we talked about the show we're going to be having with Gerald Horn and the way in which that also was, has the internationalist bent to it, but also thinking about how do we as activists who are in different parts of the world connect in through these different ways and get to know that the kind of information on the ground of what is actually happening in these places that they're trying to tell us that something else is going on, but also, thinking about what can we do where we are and how can we connect with them. So I thought we had a great conversation. I thought the guest was great. And we built on a lot of stuff. I think this is a must watch. Please share share, like, subscribe, let the people know that the Rise Up Morning Show is where it's at. That's why we have these kind of conversations and get this kind of information.
Yeah. See, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say everything you just said. So Tasha be biting my style. It's cool though. You know what I mean? It's just like, shout out to all those who are original like me. But yeah, no, we definitely.
I think you mean shout out to the haters like you. Shout out
Come
to
on,
all
man.
the haters like you. That's what you mean.
Don't be that way, man. Don't be that way, Natasha.
That's what you
You don't even have to be like that. Now, definitely, great dialogue, and I think it speaks to, I'm excited about the show that you, Bona Horn, and others are doing. I think that that's a powerful new mix. Good to have, Dr. Horn on board as well, for what it is that we're doing here over at Black Power Media Reloaded. And I appreciate, of course, I've been out the mix for a while on the platform, but I'm definitely grateful for you all holding it down. It's been, some real, powerful content, real solid work. And I'm gonna give some of y'all credit, but
That's a hater peeking out. That's a hater and you peeking out a little bit,
can't help it. Anyway, it's a lot going on in the Sudan. I think before we
and I think we always got to keep the Sudan top of mind, but also top of conversation. As well as how we've talked about Chad and we talking about the Sahel states, and we have to keep Sudan top of mind, because you know what, nobody else is.
No question.
And guess what? It's our responsibility too when we're thinking about what needs to be done and how can you support. Even thinking back to the conversation we're having, right? What should we be doing? At the least, we should be keeping Sudan top of mind and top of conversation as activists.
If nothing else, and that I definitely agree with you on that. I think that oftentimes folks forget certain struggles, and I think it's necessary because some folks are acting like the Sudan doesn't even exist right now. Like it's just
exactly nothing's going on. Like it's as usual.
Like nothing to see here, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like hundreds of thousands of people who have been slaughtered, and who are going through it, and folks are acting like it doesn't exist. I'm having some problems over here. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, don't worry, Kalanji. I'm ready.
Oh, okay. Well, if you don't mind, we can start with the Sudan. Look at it. I think you sabotaged my joint, man. It was all good.
You mean, I got the skills that you're still working on.
Ooh, that's you colder than a white man, Natasha. That's
But it's okay. I'm here to teach you. That's my thing. I'm educated.
I appreciate it.
I'm here to teach.
Appreciate it. But teach me how to get rid of some of them tabs you got at the top of the screen. No doubt. Anyway, you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, okay. Definitely. So at least 38 people. So we know that what's going on in this Sudan is being called the worst, the currently worst international human rights crisis that is happening. And, every day and every week and every month it's continuing, and different things are happening that are egregious. And, the latest thing is at least 38 people killed in a drone attack on Sudan's El Fasher activists. So I'm just going to read this little part down here where, it says that the RSF ramps up attacks on North Darfur as rights groups accuse the paramilitaries of sexual violence in South Kordofan. So basically what happened is that there were these drone attacks by the paramilitary killing, like it says, at least 30 people within the Sudan. And I'll jump down a little bit here. And it said that the massacre followed an earlier drone attack on the city's Saudi hospital on Friday, which killed 9 people and wounded 20, forcing doctors to halt operations. And so nearly all of Darfur is currently being controlled by the RSF, right? And so they've taken over pretty much the whole of most of the Sudan, even though we know that there's other parts that are still being controlled by those who are the opposing forces to the RSF. And there's also what's happening along with this epidemic of sexual violence that's going along with these drone attacks, as well as, the warfare that's happening. And so it also highlighted the fact that there's it said that the there's widespread sexual violence and conflict, accusing the RSF and its allied groups of fighting the army of heinous allied groups fighting the army of heinous acts that could potentially constitute war crimes. And so we know that and I think we talked about it a little bit on a previous show, right? How when we think about what constitutes as different ways in which you can fight wars, that sexual violence, especially when we think about the way in which Europeans have used sexual violence for so many decades through imperialism, through colonialism, has become a tool of war that we see in different places, even that are not, European, but have been taken up. And this sexual violence is one of them. And there's dozens of cases of sexual violence, not just, with rape, but also like gang rape, sexual slavery is also happening to women. I know that on the morning show, we talked about in a previous article how women are even committing suicide within the Sudan from being raped, because this has become such a wide epidemic in terms of thinking about the other tools in which they're using to commit violence, and not just having the actual killings, but also, what comes along, like the type of like human cost of what does it mean, like if someone's raped, like what do you lose, what parts of you dies in terms of that, right? Too. So just to close out the story, it talks about they mentioned a woman who was 35, and they were saying that they're targeting women between the ages of like, I think 7 and 50 is what I believe. It's within the article here, but one survivor who's a 35-year-old Nuba woman was describing, how she was gang raped by the RSF fighters, and they stormed her family compound, killed her husband and son, and then when they tried to intervene in this whole thing. And it says that the UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, warned last month about the epidemic of sexual violence against women in Sudan, saying the world must do better. And in November, the HRW relayed its findings of the RSF Chief General Mohammed Hamad Dagalo, but received no response. And so this is just like the latest of, the tragedies and the heinous things that are being done within the Sudan with this drone attack, as well as the increase in the pervasiveness of sexual violence.
This is it's sickening on so many levels, because even when you talk about the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet, this is one of the spaces that you're not hearing a lot about on the news. You know what I'm saying? In fact, if you talk about the top 10 worst, quote unquote, crisis in the world, the majority of them happen to be on the continent of Africa. But for some reason, it seems like it's being glossed over. It seems like the 66,000 reported deaths, which they're saying is far more than that right now, the 11 million displaced individuals in the Sudan, the millions, 25 plus millions of people who lack aid in the Sudan. We can't even say the world is watching, because it is almost like as if it's not happening, because it's not being reported. Playing cracker's advocate, why do you think that is, Natasha?
Well, I think that because when we think about, where's this feedback coming from? Is it you or is it me?
Let me check my mic.
Can you hear how? Okay, yeah, no feedback. Okay, so you still got to work on that new little mic you got. But I think that part of it is, I think even going back to the conversation that we were having early with Vijay, right, is this idea of levels of humanity. And so I think it's a couple of things. Obviously, it's always different, many things that are factors that are playing into it. But I think it's one, right? This the idea that when this has happened, that humanity only belongs to Europeans. So that if a white kid is killed, or, you know, a Ukrainian kid is killed, oh, you know, we all have to say like, this is a tragedy. But when hundreds of thousands of people are being killed within the Sudan, oh, you know, whatever, that's just, you know, what's happening. And I think that there's also this idea that it's normal for Africa to be in constant states of disarray, of violence, of instability. I think that because it's been that the European powers who, because also I think we also reported as well as, you know, like who's funding the RSF, right? As well as thinking about and it was I'm forgetting the name of the country, but you can jump in if you remember. But
I'm sorry, my brain is kind of
yeah, but basically,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but basically, just thinking about like when we're thinking about whose deaths are considered okay, or whose deaths are considered something to be normalized, or, you know, whose countries is it normal to be constantly in a state of disarray, right? And how is that supported by Western powers? Yes, you might not see money coming in directly or direct intervention, but how is that instability supported, and how is it normalized? I think that's also the other part, is that they've normalized instability in Africa, right? And I think people have come to believe that, like, oh yeah, that's just Africa. They're always, you know, doing those things, or, you know, that's always happening. It's always unstable. There's always these things happening, but these are legacies of colonialism. When we talk about, even like when we were mentioning before, homelessness, or these ongoing wars, these are things that are outgrowths of colonialism and the continued oppression of these countries, and the continued manipulation of their economies and their societies and their governments, and who controls and runs these countries to be able to support and make sure that these types of things happen. Just like when people were talking about, when people were talking about Iraq and how that came to be such a mess because of the legacy of colonialism and imperialism. And it's the same thing here when we're thinking about the Sudan. And we know that, like, the RSF and the Sudanese army has been in this power struggle since April 2023. And we also had the two Sudanese brothers who came and told us, you know, the history of how this whole struggle came to be as well. And so I think it's that, and as well as when countries are destabilized, when there's genocides that happen, that these Western powers benefit from that, because then it's easier for you to go into the country and take the different minerals and the different things that exist within that country to use the people, to abuse the people, right? That is also part of like what is always, even when we talked about it before, when they say like, oh, we're sending in UN troops to this country or that country, what always comes out? That there's abuse of the people. And so like this idea that, like, yes, when there's instability, when there's these humanitarian crises happening, there are people and there are countries that are benefit from that instability. And so therefore it shouldn't be made big news. And we shouldn't be, you know, talking about it. And we shouldn't be trying to find a way to stop it and to help and to support, you know, the end of it, because that is not profitable.
And excuse me. And we was thinking about the UAE.
Yes,
United Arab Emirates. When we were talking about who's doing the funding over there. I don't know why I got a brain freeze. I got so into just the colossal effect and damage on this nation, and how, you know, like I said, I'm still floored at just the, you know, again, it takes me back to the whole Black Lives Matter. And it's like, Black lives where? You know what I'm saying? Black lives in the US, Black lives in England, Black lives in France. And we talked about that, I believe, yesterday, just how it only matters when you can see it and when you can touch it, when you can identify it. The majority of the people have no concern with not only the Sudan, they're not concerned with the Congo, they're not concerned with the Sahel, they're not concerned with any region of Africa, unless, you know, it's, you know, unless it's sanctioned by U.S. or Europeans as far as their takeovers. Definitely, we appreciate you all for checking us out here on the Rise Up Morning Show, Rise Up International Morning Show. Make sure, as Natasha mentioned, to share, subscribe,
hit the notification button.
No doubt, all that good stuff. And also, I had to remind myself that we was on at 7 o'clock. I don't know who came up with that bright idea.
I don't know who said that.
Anyway, we're here 7 to 9 a.m. EST. Natasha got us waking up earlier, man. I just don't even understand it.
That wasn't me. That wasn't me. I ain't gonna say or point to who it was, but it wasn't me.
We need Isaac back. That's the problem, man. Once we get Isaac back to get some order around here. Him and Kimber been slipping out this whole week. I don't know what's going on with that. But definitely look out for a number of shows we have. I know Professor Griff had a show yesterday dealing with Imam Jamil. I know that our brothers over at U.S. Political Prisoners and You, Frank and what's my brother's name?
Abdul Haq.
I don't know how I keep forgetting Abdul Haq's name. I don't want no problems, Abdul Haq. It's Natasha. She be confusing me. But anyway, check out their show.
I ain't gonna say why Kalanji's forgetting, but
wow, it's too much hate around here, folks. But yeah, definitely, they have a show on political prisoners every Wednesday at 1 p.m. EST. Abdul Haq and Frank dealing with U.S. political prisoners and You. It's necessary. It's a necessary show. If you haven't caught it, make sure you tap in. Also, our sisters, Daughters of the Whirlwind, they just dropped a show with Chairman Fred Jr. recently. Also on December 30th, they have a showing of their film, Seeds of the Revolution. It'll be airing right here on Black